Single mother finds hidden treasure under the old house, and her life changes completely. Jessica Mitchell took a deep breath as she looked at the bills piling up on the kitchen table. As a single mother of 2 young children, 5-year-old Brandon and little Emily, just 8 months old, each day was a struggle to get enough money to put food on the table and keep the lights on. That Tuesday morning, while trying to fix a loose floorboard in the kitchen of the house she inherited from Grandma Eleanor, her hammer went through the rotten wood and hit something metallic underneath. The sound was different, as if it had struck a can or a box. Jessica stopped what she was doing, her heart racing. Could it be that Grandma had hidden something down there? The house was in the St. Christopher neighborhood, in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was a simple brick house with a colonial tile roof, but it held decades of history of the Mitchell family. Jessica had moved there 6 months ago, after losing her job at the textile factory and no longer being able to pay the rent for the apartment where she lived. Carefully, she pulled a few more loose boards. The smell of damp earth and mold rose from the depths under the floor. Using her cell phone flashlight, she saw the outline of a metal box buried about half a meter below the floor. "Mom, what are you doing?" asked Brandon, appearing at the kitchen door already dressed in his school uniform. "Nothing much, my son. Just fixing some loose boards here. Go have your breakfast because you can't be late today." Jessica waited for the boy to leave before continuing. With trembling hands, she dug around the box until she managed to pull it out. It was a blue metal box the size of a shoebox, but heavy, very heavy. She sat on the kitchen floor and carefully opened the lid. Her eyes widened. Inside were yellowed papers, some jewelry that sparkled even in the dim light, and what looked like certificates or important documents folded up. Her hands shook as she picked up the first paper. It was a property deed in Grandma Eleanor's name, dated 1978. The document mentioned a plot of land in downtown New Orleans, in the French Quarter area. Jessica knew that area well. Nowadays it was one of the most valuable parts of the city. "This can't be true," she murmured to herself. She picked up another document. It was a birth certificate for her father, Thomas Mitchell, but there was something strange. The birth date was different from what she had always known. According to that paper, her father was 3 years younger than he had claimed. She continued sifting through the papers. There was a handwritten letter, with the shaky handwriting she recognized as Grandma Eleanor's. The letter was addressed to her, Jessica. "My dear granddaughter, if you are reading this, it's because you have finally found what I hid. Forgive an old woman for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I had my reasons. Your Uncle Richard doesn't know about this land, and it's better that it stays that way. He was always greedy, and I knew that if he found out about the property, he would find a way to take it for himself. The land is rightfully yours, because you are the only one in the family who always took care of me with genuine affection. Use it wisely, my daughter." Jessica felt tears welling up. Grandma had passed away 2 years ago, and she had always been the granddaughter who stayed by the elderly woman's side the most during her illness. Her Uncle Richard barely visited her, but after the funeral he showed a lot of interest in organizing the assets left behind. She looked at the jewelry. They were antique pieces, some with stones that looked like real diamonds. There was a gold ring with a blue stone, a pearl necklace, and some earrings that appeared to be very valuable. "Mum," Brandon's voice brought her back to reality. "Can I go to school?" "Of course, my love. But listen carefully. Don't tell anyone about what you saw here in the kitchen, okay? It's just Mommy's little game." "Okay, Mom. See you later." Jessica waited to hear the gate close before turning her attention back to the documents. There were more papers, and the more she read, the more confused she became. According to the documentation, Uncle Richard had sold the French Quarter property in 2019, just 6 months after Grandma's passing. But how could he sell something that wasn't his? And why did Grandma never mention owning such a valuable property? The questions pounded in Jessica's head as she arranged all the papers on the kitchen table. Little Emily woke up crying from her crib in the living room, interrupting her thoughts. "Hush, my princess," said Jessica, picking up the baby. "Mommy's trying to figure out something very important here." While breastfeeding Emily, Jessica couldn't take her eyes off the scattered documents. If all this were true, It meant her life could completely change. No more sleepless nights wondering how she'd pay the bills. No more anguish seeing Brandon asking for toys she couldn't afford. But it also meant she'd have to confront Uncle Richard, and that frightened her. Richard Mitchell was known in the neighborhood as a successful businessman. He owned a thriving building supply store, drove a new car, and lived in a large house in the Garden District. He'd always been Grandma Eleanor's favorite son, or at least that's what he claimed. Jessica remembered the arguments she witnessed between Grandma and Richard during the elderly woman's final years. He always pressured his mother to sell the house where Jessica now lived, saying it was too big for a woman alone. Grandma resisted, but Jessica could see she was shaken by her son's pressure. Now everything made sense. Richard wanted Grandma to sell the house because he knew there was something valuable hidden. But did he know about the French Quarter property? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. After putting Emily back in her crib, Jessica decided she needed help to better understand those documents. Her first thought was to seek out Mrs. Dorothy, a 68-year-old neighbor who had been very close with Grandma Eleanor. Mrs. Dorothy lived next door and had a reputation for knowing everything that happened in the area. If anyone could clarify details about Grandma's life, it would be her. Jessica knocked on her neighbor's door around 10 in the morning. Mrs. Dorothy appeared wearing a floral apron with a smile on her face. "Jessica, dear, how are you? And little Emily?" "We're fine, Mrs. Dorothy. Do you have a moment to talk? It's about my grandmother." "Of course, dear. Come in, I'll make some coffee." Mrs. Dorothy's house smelled of cloves and cinnamon. The walls were covered with family photos and Catholic saints. Jessica settled in the living room while the neighbor prepared coffee. "Mrs. Dorothy, did you know if my grandmother had any other properties besides the house I'm living in?" The question made the woman stop what she was doing and look directly at Jessica. "Why are you asking this, dear?" "I found some old papers and got curious." Mrs. Dorothy served the coffee and sat across from Jessica. Her expression turned serious. "Your grandmother was a private woman, Jessica, but I can tell you she didn't trust Richard much. Several times she told me she was afraid her son would try to take everything after she passed." "Did she ever mention any specific property?" "Well, I can't say for sure, but I remember once she talked about a property her late husband, your Grandpa William, had bought downtown. This must have been in the 70s, but I never knew any details." Jessica felt her heart race. The information matched what was in the documents. "What about Uncle Richard? Did he know about this?" "Jessica, your uncle was always very curious about his parents' business. I remember after your grandpa died in 1995, he kept going through a bunch of family papers. Your grandma was really angry at the time. Do you remember anything else, ma'am?" Mrs. Dorothy took a sip of her coffee and was thoughtful for a few seconds. "There's one thing that always caught my attention. About a year before your grandma passed away, Richard started showing up here more often. He visited his mother almost every weekend, something he hadn't done in years, and several times I heard arguments between them." "What kind of arguments?" "He pressured her a lot to sell the house, saying it was dangerous for a woman her age to live alone. But Eleanor always said the house was for you, that you were the only granddaughter who truly cared about her." Jessica felt a wave of emotion. It was true she spent at least 2 days a week at her grandma's house, helping with cleaning, doing shopping, and simply keeping her company. "Mrs. Dorothy, after my grandma died, did Uncle Richard come here to her house many times?" "Oh, yes. He spent days here going through everything. He took several pieces of furniture, books, even pots and pans. He said he was organizing things for you to feel comfortable when you moved in." But Jessica knew her uncle hadn't taken anything to organize for her. In fact, when she moved into the house, she found only the basic furniture and nothing of apparent value. "Did he mess with the floorboards or do any kind of repairs?" The question made Mrs. Dorothy's eyes widen. "Wow, now that you mention it, yes. I remember once he came here with a drill and hammer, said he was going to fix some loose floorboards. He was here all day making noise. But after you moved in, I noticed the kitchen floor still had issues." Jessica felt a tightness in her chest. Richard had looked for the box but hadn't found it, probably because it was hidden deeper than he imagined. "Mrs. Dorothy, if I need a witness to prove something about my grandma, would you help me?" Of course, dear. Your grandma was like a sister to me. If something wrong is going on, you can count on me. Jessica returned home with her mind racing. She was now certain that the documents were authentic and that Uncle Richard had illegally sold the land that belonged to her grandma. But what to do with this information? She didn't have money to hire a lawyer, and facing her uncle without legal help seemed impossible. She spent the rest of the morning researching online about land values in the French Quarter area. What she found left her even more shocked. Properties in that area were selling for millions of dollars due to the tourist and cultural appreciation of the region. If her grandma's land was really the size described in the documents, about 800 square meters, the value could easily reach $2 million at current prices. $2 million, she repeated quietly, hardly able to believe it. With that money, she could give her children a completely different life. Brandon could study at a private school. Emily would have everything she needed when she grew up, and she herself could maybe go to college for the education degree she had always dreamed of. But first, she needed to find a way to prove that her uncle had committed fraud. Jessica spent the afternoon researching law firms that offered free consultations. She found a few that handled family conflict cases and scheduled an appointment for the next day. When Brandon came back from school, she noticed the boy was quieter than usual. "How was school today, honey?" "It was cool, Mom, but the teacher asked when you're coming to the parent-teacher conference." "I said I didn't know." Jessica felt a pang of guilt. She had missed the last meeting because she was working as a house cleaner for a family in the Garden District. She couldn't afford to miss a day of work. "I'll talk to the secretary's aunt tomorrow to reschedule, okay?" "Okay." "Mom, what are those papers on the table?" "They're great-grandma Eleanor's documents. I'm organizing some things." Brandon came closer and looked curiously at the papers. "Wow, what beautiful handwriting. Great-grandma wrote like this." Jessica smiled. Eleanor really did have elegant handwriting, even in her later years. Yes, she always had beautiful handwriting. Now go wash your hands for dinner. During dinner, Jessica watched her children and felt determination growing inside her. Emily was happily babbling in her high chair, and Brandon was talking about science class where he learned about the solar system. These children deserved to have every opportunity she never had, and if the documents she found were really the key to a better life, she would fight for them, no matter how difficult it was. That night, after putting the children to sleep, Jessica organized all the papers from the metal box into separate folders. Property documents in one folder, jewelry in another, and Grandma's letter stored with special care. She also made a list of everything she needed to investigate. 1. Check if the land was really sold by Uncle Richard. 2. Find out who it was sold to and for how much. 3. Find a lawyer who could help her. 4. Gather witnesses who knew about Grandma's situation. Have the jewelry appraised to understand its value. Before sleeping, Jessica reread Grandma's letter one more time. The elderly woman's words seemed to echo in the silence of the house. "Use wisely, my daughter." She promised herself she would do exactly that. The next morning, Jessica took Brandon to school and left Emily with the neighbor, Mrs. Dorothy, who offered to watch the baby for a few hours. The law office was in downtown New Orleans, in an old but well-maintained building. Jessica went up to the 4th floor and found a simple but clean waiting room. The lawyer who assisted her was named Ms. Rebecca Thompson. She was a woman around 45 years old, with black hair tied in a bun and prescription glasses. Her appearance conveyed seriousness and competence. "Jessica, right? On the phone you mentioned a family inheritance case. Can you tell me the details?" Jessica told the whole story, from discovering the metal box to her suspicions about the illegal sale of the land by her uncle. She showed all the documents she had found. Ms. Rebecca examined the papers carefully, using a magnifying glass to check details of signatures and stamps. "These documents appear authentic," she said after a few minutes. "The handwriting in the letter matches the signature on the other papers, and the stamps appear legitimate. Does that mean I can sue my uncle?" "Let's take it slow. First, we need to verify if there was actually a transaction involving this land after your grandmother's passing. This can be checked at the property registry office. And how much would it cost for you to represent me?" Ms. Rebecca hesitated before answering. Jessica, I'll be honest with you. A case like this could take months or even years to resolve. My fees would be $5,000 to start, plus court costs. Jessica felt her heart sink. She didn't even have $500 in her account, let alone $5,000. I don't have that money, ma'am. I understand your situation. There's the possibility of you seeking the Public Defender's Office, which offers free legal assistance for low-income individuals. But I must warn you that they have a very long waiting list. Jessica thanked her and left the office feeling discouraged. How was she going to get justice if she couldn't even pay for legal help? Walking through the downtown streets, she passed several jewelry stores. An idea came to her mind. What if she sold some of the jewelry she had found to pay for a lawyer? She entered the first jewelry store she came across. The owner, an elderly man with a grey moustache, assisted her politely. "I'd like to have some pieces appraised, please," said Jessica, taking the blue stone ring out of a bag. The man took the ring and examined it with a special magnifying glass. "It's an interesting piece. The stone appears to be a genuine sapphire, and the gold has good purity. I can pay $300 for it." $300, Jessica was surprised. She had expected much more. "Ma'am, understand that I need to have a margin for resale, and without a certificate of origin I can't offer more than that." Jessica thanked him and left the store without selling anything. $300 wouldn't be nearly enough to hire a lawyer. She decided to try another strategy. She went to the property registry office to check if she could get information about the land. The registry clerk was attentive and checked the system using the address listed in her grandmother's documents. There was indeed a transaction involving this property in June 2019, he confirmed. It was sold to a company called Golden Coast Construction LLC. And who signed off on the sale? According to our records, it was Mr. Richard Mitchell, as the executor of Eleanor Mitchell's estate. Jessica felt a mix of relief and anger. Her suspicions were correct. Is it possible to know how much it was sold for? The declared value was $380,000. Jessica nearly fell off her chair. Richard had sold land worth millions for less than $400,000, and worse, he wasn't even the rightful owner. "Sir, is it possible to contest this sale if I prove it was done without authorization?" "That would be a judicial matter, ma'am. I can't provide legal guidance, but I recommend you seek a specialized lawyer." Jessica left the registry office with one certainty. She needed to find a way to pursue the case, even without money to hire a private attorney. On her way home, she passed by the neighborhood church where she grew up. Father Matthew, who had known her family for decades, was in the garden watering the plants. "Jessica, how are you, my child? And the kids?" "We're fine, Father. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Father Matthew was a 60-year-old man with graying hair and an ever-ready smile. Jessica had grown up listening to his stories and advice, and she knew she could trust him. She told the priest the whole situation, and he listened attentively without interrupting. "Jessica, your grandmother Eleanor was a very wise woman," he said when she finished. "If she hid those documents, she had good reasons." "But Father, how am I going to face my uncle without help?" "My child, sometimes God puts us in difficult situations to show us our own strength. Have you thought about seeking the Public Defender's Office? The lawyer I consulted said they have a very long waiting list." "That's true, but I know a public defender who specializes in family law, Ms. Amanda Stevens. She attends our parish and is a woman very committed to justice. Can I introduce you to her?" Jessica felt a spark of hope. "You would do that for me?" "Of course, my child. I'll call her today." Jessica returned home, feeling a bit more optimistic. Dorothy was on the porch playing with Emily in her lap, while Brandon was drawing sitting on the sidewalk. "How was your walk, Jessica?" "Enlightening, Mrs. Dorothy. I discovered some important things." That afternoon, Jessica received a call from Father Matthew. "Jessica, I spoke with Miss Amanda. She can see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Public Defender's Office. I've already explained your situation briefly." "Father, I don't know how to thank you." "No need to thank me, my child. Just fight for what is rightfully yours." Jessica spent the night organizing the documents better and preparing a list of questions to ask the public defender. For the first time in weeks, she managed to sleep with fewer worries. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. The Public Defender's Office was located in a modern building in the administrative center of New Orleans. Jessica arrived a few minutes before the scheduled time, nervous but determined. Ms. Amanda Stevens was a woman of about 35, with loose curly hair and a gaze that conveyed intelligence and determination. Her desk was full of case files, but she gave her full attention to Jessica's case. "Father Matthew told me about your situation. Can you show me the documents you found?" Jessica laid out all the papers on the public defender's desk. Ms. Amanda examined them carefully, taking notes on a notepad. "Jessica, these documents are very important. Your grandmother's handwritten letter is especially relevant, as it clearly expresses her intention to leave the property to you. Does that mean I have a chance to get the land back? We have a strong case. The problem is that your uncle acted as the estate administrator, which gave him certain legal privileges. But if we can prove that he acted in bad faith by hiding the existence of these documents, we can reverse the sale." "And how long would that take?" "Cases like these usually take between 1 and 2 years, but I can represent you for free through the Public Defender's Office." Jessica felt immense relief. She had finally found professional help. "Ms. Amanda, what do I need to do now?" "First, I'll file a motion challenging the inventory conducted by your uncle. We'll argue that there was omission of assets and bad faith in handling the process. I'll also request the annulment of the land sale." "And my uncle, will he be notified?" "Yes. As soon as the case is filed, he'll receive a summons. It's likely he'll hire a lawyer to defend himself." Jessica felt a knot in her stomach. The idea of facing her uncle in a legal proceeding scared her. "Ms. Amanda, my uncle is an influential person in the neighborhood. He has money and connections. Won't it be dangerous for me to stand up to him?" "Jessica, I understand your concern, but you have rights and the law exists to protect them. Besides, you're not alone now." Ms. Amanda explained all the steps that would be taken and advised Jessica on how to prepare for possible retaliation from her uncle. "It's important that you document any attempts at intimidation or pressure he might make. Record conversations if necessary. Keep witnesses around during encounters." "He doesn't know yet that I found the documents. Should I tell him?" "No, it's better for him to find out through the court summons. That prevents him from trying to interfere with the evidence or pressure you before the case begins." Jessica left the Public Defender's Office feeling empowered for the first time in months. She had found a competent ally, and finally her fight for justice had a real chance of success. But she knew the coming months would be difficult. Uncle Richard wouldn't easily accept being challenged, especially by a niece he had always considered inferior. On her way home, Jessica thought about how her life had changed in recent weeks. From a single mother struggling to survive, she now found herself involved in a legal battle that could completely transform her family's future. When she got home, she found Brandon watching television and Emily sleeping in her crib. The normality of the domestic scene contrasted with the intensity of the emotions she felt. "Mom, how was your meeting?" asked Brandon. "It went very well, sweetheart. I might be able to solve some important problems for our family." "What kind of problems?" Jessica knelt beside her son and hugged him. "Problems that can make our lives better, Brandon. But first, Mommy needs to be very brave." "You're always brave, Mom." The innocence and trust in the boy's voice strengthened Jessica's determination even more. She would fight not just for justice, but for her children's future. That night, Jessica read through all the documents she had found one more time. Each paper was proof that her grandmother had been a more complex and forward-thinking woman than she had imagined. The handwritten letter, especially, revealed the care and love that Eleanor felt for her granddaughter. "You're the only one in the family who always took care of me with genuine affection." These words echoed in Jessica's mind like a posthumous blessing. 3 weeks later, Miss Amanda called with news. "Jessica, the lawsuit was filed yesterday. Your uncle was served the summons this morning." "How do you know that?" "The process server confirmed delivery. It's likely that in the next few hours or days he'll contact you." Jessica felt her stomach churn. The confrontation she had feared so much was about to happen. What should I do if he shows up here? Stay calm, don't let yourself be intimidated, and if possible, have a witness present. Record the conversation if you can. But remember, now he's the one in a delicate position, not you. The phone call came at 9 o'clock the next morning. Jessica immediately recognized the angry voice of Uncle Richard. Jessica, what's this story about a lawsuit? What kind of nonsense are you pulling? Good morning, Uncle. What lawsuit are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, girl. You know very well what I'm talking about. This paperwork saying I sold land that wasn't mine. I don't know anything about it, Uncle. If you're receiving some legal document, there must be reasons for it. Jessica, I'll be clear with you. I don't know what lies you've made up, but this stops now. You don't have the money or the knowledge to face me in court. Uncle, if you haven't done anything wrong, you have no reason to worry, right? The threatening tone in Richard's voice became more evident. Listen carefully, Jessica. You're playing with fire. If you don't drop this ridiculous lawsuit, you'll regret it. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you advice. You live in the house that was left from our mother's inheritance out of my kindness. I could easily change my mind about that. Jessica felt the anger growing inside her. Uncle, this house was left to me by Grandma Eleanor. You have no right to take it from me. You'll see what rights I have. I have lawyers much better than that cheap public defender you got. How do you know my lawyer is from the public defender's office? I know a lot of things, Jessica, more than you imagine. The call ended abruptly, leaving Jessica with trembling hands. It was clear that Richard was nervous and willing to use any tactic to intimidate her. Immediately she called Ms. Amanda and reported the entire conversation. Jessica, this is great for our case. He practically confessed that he sold the land and even made threats. Did you record the conversation? I couldn't, Miss. It happened too fast. No problem. If he calls again, try to record it and write down all the details of this conversation while they're still fresh in your memory. That same afternoon, Jessica was playing with Emily in the backyard when she saw a black car stop in front of the gate. Richard got out of the vehicle, accompanied by another man she didn't know. Her heart raced, but she remembered Miss Amanda's instructions. She called Mrs. Dorothy, who was watering plants in the house next door. Mrs. Dorothy, could you come here for a minute? My uncle has arrived and I'd like to have a witness. The neighbor noticed the tension in Jessica's voice and immediately approached. Richard opened the gate without asking permission and entered the backyard as if he owned the place. He was a 52-year-old man with graying hair, a prominent belly, and a permanently scowling expression. The man accompanying him wore a suit and appeared to be a lawyer. Jessica, we need to talk in private, said Richard, casting an irritated look toward Mrs. Dorothy. Uncle, anything you have to say can be said in front of Mrs. Dorothy. She's like family. This is Mr. Kenneth, my lawyer. He came here to try and resolve this situation without much fuss. The lawyer stepped forward, pulling some papers from a briefcase. Miss Jessica, I'm Mr. Kenneth Harrison. I represent Mr. Richard in this matter. We'd like to make a proposal to clear up this misunderstanding. What kind of proposal? We're willing to offer the sum of $50,000 for you to drop the lawsuit and acknowledge there were no irregularities in the sale of the property. Jessica almost laughed at the proposal. $50,000 for land worth millions. Mr. Kenneth, I don't know much about laws, but $50,000 for a property in the French Quarter seems very low to me. Richard lost his patience. Jessica, you really don't understand anything. That property was sold for $380,000. There were still estate debts to pay off. The $50,000 is practically a gift. But, Uncle, how could you sell property that wasn't yours? I was the estate executor. I had authorization to sell the inheritance assets, even the assets Grandma specifically left to me. The question caught Richard off guard. He exchanged nervous glances with the lawyer. What kind of talk is that? Our mother didn't leave anything specifically to you. Are you sure, Uncle? Mrs. Dorothy watched the entire discussion in silence, but Jessica could tell the neighbor was paying attention to every detail. Mr. Kenneth tried to regain control of the situation. Miss Jessica, our proposal is on the table. We suggest you speak with your lawyer and consider it carefully. Lawsuits are time-consuming and costly, and there's no guarantee of success. Mr. Kenneth, I will speak with my lawyer, but I can tell you now that $50,000 doesn't interest me. You'll regret this, Jessica, said Richard. You don't know who you're dealing with. Who exactly, Uncle? The company that bought the property has powerful lawyers. They won't quietly accept you questioning a legitimate sale. If it was legitimate, then there shouldn't be a problem, right? Richard and the lawyer left, visibly irritated. After the car drove away, Mrs. Dorothy approached Jessica. Dear, what's this about property in the French Quarter? Jessica told her neighbor everything she had discovered. Mrs. Dorothy listened with wide eyes. Jessica, this is serious. Are you sure you want to fight all this? Mrs. Dorothy, if I don't fight for my rights, who will? You're right, honey, and you can count on me for whatever you need. That night, Jessica called Ms. Amanda and reported her uncle's visit and the settlement offer. Jessica, their ridiculous offer only confirms they know they're wrong. If they were confident the sale was legitimate, they wouldn't be offering any settlement. But he said the buying company has powerful lawyers. So what? The law is the same for everyone. Rich or poor, justice should be equal. Ms. Amanda, I'm scared. What if they try to harm me in some way? Jessica, I understand your fear, but you're not alone anymore. If anything suspicious happens, you call me immediately. 2 weeks passed without any news. Jessica returned to her routine of working as a house cleaner, caring for her children, and waiting for updates about the lawsuit. But the calm was about to be broken. On a Thursday afternoon, Jessica arrived home after a day of work to find Brandon visibly upset. What happened, sweetheart? Mom, a man came by asking about you. He said he was from the bank. Jessica felt a chill down her spine. What kind of questions did he ask? He asked if you owed any money, if we were going to have to leave the house. I told him I didn't know anything. What did this man look like? He was wearing a suit, but he didn't seem friendly, and he had a briefcase full of papers. Jessica hugged her son, trying to hide her own worry. Brandon, next time a stranger comes here and you're alone, don't open the gate. Call Mrs. Dorothy to talk to the person. Are we in danger, Mum? No, sweetheart. We're just going through a tough time, but it will pass. That same night, Jessica got a call from an unknown number. Jessica Mitchell. Yes, who's speaking? I'm from the Campbell Collection Agency. You have an overdue debt of $15,000 with interest and adjustments. What debt? I don't owe that money to anyone. Found we have a contract here signed by you for an $8,000 loan taken out in March of this year. This is a mistake. I never took out any loan. You're listed in our system as a debtor. If you don't resolve the situation, we'll have to take legal measures. What measures? Asset seizure, account freezing, inclusion in the credit bureau, and TransUnion. Jessica hung up the phone with trembling hands. It was obvious someone was trying to intimidate her by creating fake debts. She immediately called Miss Amanda. Jessica, this is pure intimidation. First thing tomorrow, I'll file a legal complaint against this collection agency, and I'll include this as evidence that the opposing party is using illegal tactics. Miss Amanda, I'm scared. Can they create serious problems for me? Jessica, collection agencies can't invent debts. If they had a real contract, they'd have to show your original signature. It's clearly an attempt at pressure. What if they put my name in the credit protection agencies? If they do that based on a non-existent debt, we'll have a case for moral damages against them. It could result in a good compensation. Despite the lawyer's reassuring words, Jessica had a restless night. The feeling of being watched and pressured was making her paranoid. The next day, when she went to work at the Anderson family's house in the Garden District, her employer called her for a talk. Jessica, I got a very strange phone call last night. What kind of phone call, Mrs. Clare? A man saying you're involved in serious legal problems, that maybe I should reconsider whether it's safe to have you working here. Jessica felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. It was clear someone was trying to destroy her reputation. Mrs. Clare, that's not true. I'm just settling family inheritance matters. Jessica, you've worked here for 2 years. I trust you, but I need to know what's going on. Jessica decided to tell her employer the truth. Mrs. Clare listened carefully and finally nodded in approval. Jessica, Your right to fight for your rights. Whoever called here is trying to harm you on purpose. You can keep working as usual." "Thank you, Mrs. Clare. You have no idea how much relief that gives me. But Jessica, if things get too complicated, maybe it's better for you to stay home for a few days until the situation calms down." When Jessica returned home in the afternoon, she found an unpleasant surprise. The front door was slightly open, something she never let happen. She entered carefully, calling for Brandon. The boy appeared from the kitchen with a worried look. "Mom, someone came in here while I was at school. How do you know?" "The papers that were on the kitchen table were messed with, and the drawer in your room was open." Jessica rushed to the bedroom and checked the drawer where she kept the original documents found in the metal box. Everything was still there, but it had clearly been tampered with. "Brandon, next time you leave, even if it's just for school, lock all the doors and windows." "Okay, Mom, but why would anyone break in here?" "Someone is trying to scare us, my son, but they won't succeed." Jessica immediately called Ms. Amanda and reported the break-in. "Jessica, this is serious. I'll notify the judge handling the case right away. Breaking and entering is a crime." "But they didn't take anything." "That doesn't matter. The intention was to intimidate you, and that's unacceptable. I'll request protective measures for you and your children." "What kind of measures?" "Police patrols, a restraining order preventing those involved from approaching your home, and if necessary, a panic button." Jessica felt a mix of relief and worry. The situation was escalating beyond what she had expected. That evening, Mrs. Dorothy knocked on her door with a concerned expression. "Jessica, I need to tell you something. This afternoon while you were working, I saw two men lurking around your house. They were peering through the windows and tried to open the gate. Did you recognize any of them?" "One of them looked like that man who came here with your uncle, the one in the suit." "Mr. Kenneth?" "That's the one. And the other I'd never seen before." Jessica thanked her neighbor for the information and for keeping watch. It was comforting to know she had at least one trustworthy person nearby. Before going to bed, Jessica checked all the locks and windows in the house. The feeling of insecurity was affecting not just her, but the children too. Brandon had asked earlier why they needed to lock everything up, and she didn't know how to explain without scaring him too much. "Mommy just wants to make sure you're safe," she had said. "But safe from what, Mom?" "From people who don't like it when we stand up for our rights, like the bullies at school." "Something like that, my love." The innocence of her son's comparison touched her deeply. In essence, that was exactly it. She was facing adult bullies who couldn't stand being challenged. The following Friday, Miss Amanda called with important news. "Jessica, I've secured a hearing with the judge for Monday. He wants to hear your allegations about the intimidation." "Will I have to speak to the judge in person?" "Yes, it's important for him to see that you're a serious person who's being harassed simply for asserting your rights." "And will my uncle be there?" "Probably, along with his lawyer." Jessica felt her stomach churn at the thought of the confrontation. "Miss Amanda, what should I tell the judge?" "The truth. Explain how you discovered the documents, how you're being intimidated, and reaffirm that you just want justice to be served." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The weekend was tense. Jessica mentally rehearsed what she would say at the hearing while trying to maintain a sense of normalcy for the children. Brandon noticed his mother was more anxious than usual. "Mom, can I skip school on Monday to stay with Emily?" "Why, honey?" "So you won't be alone with her when you go out." The genuine concern in the boy's voice moved Jessica. Only 5 years old, and he was already trying to protect the family. "You don't need to, Brandon. Mrs. Dorothy will take care of both of you, and I'm going to take care of some important matters that will make our lives better." "Promise you'll come back?" "I promise, my love. I'll always come back to you." On Monday morning, Jessica dressed in the most formal outfit she had, a navy blue skirt and a white blouse she only wore on special occasions. She wanted to make a good impression on the judge. She left the children with Mrs. Dorothy and took the bus to the courthouse. During the ride, she mentally reviewed all the facts she would need to report. The courthouse was an imposing building in downtown New Orleans. Jessica felt small, walking through the halls filled with people in formal attire. She met Miss Amanda in the waiting room. "How are you, Jessica?" "Nervous, but determined." "Great. Judge Charles Anderson is known for being fair and impartial. He isn't impressed by intimidation or influence." When they were called for the hearing, Jessica saw Uncle Richard sitting across the room next to Mr. Kenneth. He looked at her with a scornful expression. Judge Anderson was a man of about 55, with graying hair and a commanding presence that demanded respect. He quickly read the case files before beginning. "Miss Jessica, I understand you claim to have discovered documents proving your ownership of a property sold by Mr. Richard Mitchell. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." Jessica was surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "And you also allege that you are being intimidated by the family." "Yes, sir. Since I filed the lawsuit, I've been receiving threatening phone calls. They tried to create a fake debt in my name, and someone broke into my house." The judge addressed Richard. "Mr. Richard, are you aware of these allegations?" "Your Honor, my niece is imagining things. There is no intimidation. I only tried to talk to her to resolve the situation within the family." "And what about the documents she presented?" "I'm not familiar with those documents, Your Honor. They could be forgeries." Ms. Amanda stood up. "Your Honor, I would like to request a handwriting analysis of the documents to prove their authenticity." "Granted." The judge noted something on his papers. "Mr. Richard, did you sell the property in question as the executor of your mother's estate?" "Yes, Your Honor. I had legal authorization to do so." "But you did not inform the court of the existence of documents indicating a specific designation of the property." "I was not aware of such documents." Jessica felt a wave of indignation. Her uncle was blatantly lying. "Your Honor," said Jessica, timidly raising her hand. "You may speak, Miss Jessica." "My uncle spent days at my grandmother's house after her passing, going through all the furniture and rooms. The neighbor can testify to that." "Is this witness available?" "Yes, Your Honor, Mrs. Dorothy Campbell." The judge noted the witness's name. "Mr. Kenneth, does your client have anything to declare regarding the intimidation allegations?" "Your Honor, my client only attempted to make a friendly settlement offer. There was no intimidation whatsoever." "And what about the alleged break-in at the plaintiff's residence?" "We have no knowledge of that, Your Honor." The judge looked directly at Jessica. "Miss Jessica, do you have evidence of these intimidations?" "I have my neighbor's account of men lurking around my house, and I can prove the threatening calls through the phone carriers." "Very well. I will order the carrier to provide the records of those calls. I will also appoint a handwriting analysis of the submitted documents." The judge paused and looked at both parties. "I want to make it clear that this court will not tolerate any form of intimidation or pressure on the involved parties. If it is proven that there was an attempt at coercion, the consequences will be severe." Richard shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mr. Richard, you and anyone under your command are prohibited from approaching the plaintiff's residence or contacting her directly. Any communication must be made through the lawyers." "But, Your Honor, she is my niece." "That does not give you the right to intimidate her. The order stands." The hearing lasted about an hour. When they left the room, Jessica felt relieved and at the same time apprehensive. "How did it go, Miss Amanda?" "It went very well, Jessica. The judge was clearly impressed with your arguments and didn't like your uncle's attitude at all." "And now?" "Now we wait for the results of the expert analysis and the phone records. If everything confirms your claims, your case will become very strong." On the way home, Jessica felt more confident. For the first time since everything began, she had the feeling that she was being heard and taken seriously. When she got home, she found Mrs. Dorothy playing with the children in the backyard. "How did it go, dear?" "It went well, Mrs. Dorothy. The judge seemed to believe my version." "That's good. You deserve to have justice served." That night, Jessica managed to sleep better than she had in weeks. The legal protection gave her a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. But the peace didn't last long. The following Wednesday, Jessica received an unexpected visit. An elegant woman, about 50 years old, knocked on her gate around 10 in the morning. She introduced herself as Laura Henderson from the company Golden Coast Construction, LLC. "Miss Jessica, can we talk for a few minutes?" "About what?" About the land our company purchased from Mr. Richard Mitchell. Jessica hesitated, remembering the court order not to speak directly with the opposing party. Ma'am, my lawyer advised me not to discuss the matter without her present. I understand completely, but I'm not here as an adversary. I'm here as a potential partner. Curiosity overcame Jessica's caution. What kind of partnership? Our company discovered some irregularities in the documentation for the land purchase. We're willing to make a proposal that benefits all parties involved. What kind of proposal? Laura opened a folder and showed some charts and blueprints. We're planning a luxury development on the land, apartments and commercial spaces. If it's proven that you're the legitimate owner, we'd like to propose a partnership. How so? You would contribute the land as your share, and we would provide the capital for construction. The profits would be divided proportionally. Jessica was surprised by the proposal. And why would you do that? Because a long legal battle hurts everyone. It's better to resolve this amicably so everyone wins. And what would my share be? Based on the land value, we estimate about 40% of the development. That would mean something around $5 million for you. Jessica nearly fainted when she heard the amount. $5 million was more money than she could imagine. Ms. Laura, I need to speak with my lawyer before making any decision. Of course, but we'd like an answer within a week. We have deadlines to meet with investors. And my uncle? Does he know about this proposal? Laura hesitated before answering. Mr. Richard was informed of our intentions. He wasn't very pleased. Why? Because our proposal to him was much smaller. Just the return of the amount he was paid, with adjustments. Jessica understood that the company had realized Richard wasn't the true owner of the land and was trying to protect themselves legally. After Laura left, Jessica immediately called Ms. Amanda. Jessica, this proposal changes everything. It's clear proof that the company recognizes the sale was irregular. But is the proposal good? Financially, yes. But we need to analyze all the contract details. Companies like this often put complicated clauses in contracts. What should I do? Schedule a meeting for tomorrow. I'll go through their entire proposal with you. That night, Jessica could barely sleep thinking about the possibility of becoming a millionaire. With $5 million, she could provide an excellent education for her children, buy a better house, and still have money left to invest in the future. But she also knew she couldn't let excitement cloud her judgment. She needed to be cautious. The next morning, Jessica went to Miss Amanda's office to review the construction company's proposal together. Jessica, I've read the entire contract. Overall, it's a fair proposal. But there are a few points that need to be modified. What points? They want you to sign an exclusivity clause, meaning you couldn't sell your share to anyone else. And there's a clause stating that if you decide to leave the partnership, they have the first right to buy your stake at market value. Is that bad? It could be. The market value would be determined by them. It's a way to potentially force you to accept a lower price in the future. And what can we do? I'll propose some changes to the contract. If they accept, it could be a good deal for you. Ms. Amanda drafted a counter-proposal with modifications that would better protect Jessica's interests. The main change was the requirement that any future valuation would be done by independent experts chosen by both parties. On Friday, Laura returned with the company's response. We've reviewed your lawyer's proposals. We can accept most of the modifications, but there's one issue. What issue? Mr. Richard has filed an injunction trying to block any negotiations involving the land until the main case is resolved. Jessica felt her stomach churn. And what does that mean? It means that even if you are the legitimate owner, we can't close the deal until the court makes a final decision. And how long could that take? A few months, maybe a year or more. Jessica felt frustrated. Just when it seemed everything was moving toward a favorable solution, her uncle found a new way to complicate things. Laura, even so, are you still interested in doing business with me? Yes. In fact, we're convinced that you are the true owner. But legally, we need to wait. And if at the end of the process I'm really recognized as the owner, will you keep the offer? Yes. In fact, I can tell you now that we'll be willing to improve the terms. After Laura left, Jessica felt like she was on an emotional roller coaster. One moment it seemed she was about to become a millionaire. The next, she discovered new obstacles. She called Miss Amanda to report the conversation. "Jessica, your uncle's injunction is a desperate tactic, but it could really delay the negotiations. Is there nothing we can do? I'll file a motion to overturn the injunction, arguing that it's only meant to harm you. But it might take a few weeks." That weekend, Jessica reflected on everything that had happened in the past few weeks. Her life had completely transformed. From a woman struggling to survive, she was now involved in a million-dollar legal battle. But regardless of the financial outcome, the experience was changing her view of herself. She had discovered that she was capable of facing powerful people and fighting for her rights. The following Monday, Jessica received an unexpected call. It was from a journalist at the local newspaper. "Jessica Mitchell, I'm Carol Peterson from the New Orleans Times. I'd like to do a story about your case." "How did you find out about this?" "Court cases are public, and stories like yours are very interesting to the public." Jessica hesitated. On one hand, the publicity could bring positive pressure to her cause. On the other, it could also attract unwanted attention. What kind of story? A report on how ordinary people can be harmed in inheritance matters and how important it is to fight for your rights. I need to consult my lawyer first. Of course. But I'd like to point out that our editorial stance has always supported the underdog against the powerful. Jessica spoke with Ms. Amanda about the journalist's proposal. "Jessica, publicity can be a double-edged sword. It can pressure the other party to negotiate, but it can also make them try to pressure you even more. What do you recommend? If you feel comfortable, you can do the interview, but without too many technical details, always focusing on the human aspect of the story." Jessica decided to grant the interview. The following Wednesday, journalist Carol Peterson came to her home with a photographer. The conversation lasted about 2 hours. Jessica told her story simply and honestly, explaining the difficulties she faced as a single mother and how discovering her grandmother's documents had changed her life. "Jessica, what do you hope will happen when all this is over?" asked Carol. "I hope justice is served, not out of greed, but for my children. They deserve to have the opportunities I never had." "And if you do receive $1 million settlement, what do you plan to do?" "First, to ensure a good education for the children. Then maybe use part of the money to help others, going through hardships like I did." The story was published in the Sunday edition of the newspaper with a photo of Jessica holding Emily in her lap, with Brandon by her side in front of the simple house where they lived. The headline of the report was, "Single Mother Fights for Stolen $1 Million Inheritance by Uncle." The impact was immediate. Jessica received dozens of supportive calls from people who identified with her story. She also received some calls from curious individuals and even from people offering financial help. But the most significant reaction came from Uncle Richard. On the Monday after publication, he called, visibly angry. "Jessica, what kind of circus was that in the newspaper? You exposed me to the whole city." "Uncle, I just told my side of the story." "Your side? You made up a bunch of lies. Now everyone at my job is talking about it. If you didn't do anything wrong, you have no reason to be upset." "Jessica, you're going to pay for this. I'll sue you and that newspaper for defamation. You're free to do whatever you want, but remember that everything I said can be proven." The call ended with Richard slamming the phone down. Miss Amanda called that same afternoon. "Jessica, the report was great for our case. I've already received calls from 3 people who witnessed irregularities in your uncle's dealings." "What kind of irregularities?" "One of them was a clerk at the courthouse at the time of the sale. She remembers that the documents presented by your uncle seemed incomplete, but she was pressured not to question it." "Is that important?" "Very important. If we can prove there was pressure to speed up the registration of the sale, we'll have another strong argument." The following week, the results of the handwriting analysis were ready. Ms. Amanda called with the news. "Jessica, I have great news. The analysis confirmed that all the documents are authentic. The handwriting in the letter and the signatures are genuinely your grandmother's." Jessica felt a wave of relief and vindication. "And now?" Now we'll request a hearing to hear the witnesses. With the positive analysis and the testimonies, our case becomes practically indisputable. 2 weeks later, a new hearing was scheduled. This time, Jessica felt much more confident. Mrs. Dorothy was called to testify first. The neighbor described in detail Richard's behavior after Eleanor's passing, confirming that he had spent days rummaging through the house and seemed to be looking for something specific. The former courthouse employee also gave important testimony, revealing that Richard had pressured to speed up the sale registration, claiming financial urgency. When it was Richard's turn to speak, he was visibly nervous. "Mr. Richard," said the judge, "given the evidence presented, do you maintain your claim that you were unaware of the documents found by your niece?" Richard exchanged glances with his lawyer before answering. "Your Honor, it's possible my mother wrote those papers without telling me." "But did you search for documents in her house after her passing?" "Yes, but I was only organizing the assets for the inventory." "And you didn't find the metal box hidden under the floorboards?" "No, Your Honor." The judge paused and looked directly at Richard. "Mr. Richard, considering that the forensic analysis confirmed the authenticity of the documents and witnesses confirmed you had unrestricted access to the house, it's hard to believe you had no knowledge of these papers." Richard swallowed hard. "Your Honor, I may have seen some papers, but I didn't know their importance. Are you changing your story?" Mr. Kenneth stood up. "Your Honor, my client would like to make a settlement proposal." Jessica felt her heart race. Finally, her uncle was giving in. "What kind of proposal?" asked the judge. "We're willing to recognize the plaintiff's rights to the property and negotiate fair compensation for the sale value." "Miss Jessica, what do you think of the proposal?" Jessica looked at Ms. Amanda, who gave a discreet nod of approval. "Your Honor, I'm willing to hear the proposal, provided it's truly fair." The judge ordered a 30-minute recess for the parties to discuss settlement terms. In the meeting room, Mr. Kenneth presented the final proposal. "We acknowledge that Miss Jessica is the legitimate owner of the property. We're willing to return the full amount received from the sale, adjusted for inflation, plus 1% monthly interest." Ms. Amanda quickly did some calculations. That would come to about $650,000, but considering the property is worth much more now, the proposal is insufficient. "What would be an acceptable proposal for you?" asked Mr. Kenneth. "The current value of the property or reversal of the sale so Jessica can negotiate directly with the construction company." "Reversing the sale is complicated because there's already a project underway on the property." "Then the current market value." Mr. Kenneth left the room to speak with Richard. He returned after 15 minutes. "We can offer $1 million in cash." Jessica looked at Miss Amanda, who shook her head negatively. "That's still less than half the actual value. Our counteroffer is $1,800,000. I'll consult my client." After 20 more minutes of negotiation, they reached an amount of $1,500,000 to be paid in 3 equal installments over 6 months. "Jessica, what do you think?" asked Miss Amanda. Jessica thought of her children, the hardships they'd endured, and the opportunity for change before her. "I accept." When they returned to the courtroom, the judge approved the settlement. Jessica had officially won the battle. Outside the courthouse, she hugged Miss Amanda with tears in her eyes. "Doctor, I don't know how to thank you." "Jessica, you're the one who deserves congratulations. You had the courage to fight when many people would have given up. And now? Now you'll take care of your children and build the future you've always dreamed of." When Jessica arrived home, Brandon was playing in the backyard and Emily was sleeping in her crib. The simple house with exposed brick walls had never felt so welcoming. "How did it go, Mum?" asked Brandon. "It went very well, my love. Our life is going to change a lot from now on. For the better. Much better." That night, Jessica read her Grandma Eleanor's handwritten letter one last time. The elderly woman's words had become prophetically true. "Use it wisely, my child." And Jessica knew exactly how she would do that. In the following months, Jessica used the settlement money to buy a larger house in a better neighborhood, enroll Brandon in a private school, and pursue a college degree in education, fulfilling a long-held dream. But she didn't forget her roots or the people who had helped her. She created a scholarship fund for underprivileged children in the neighborhood where she grew up and hired Mrs. Dorothy as a childcare provider, ensuring a decent income for the neighbor who had supported her so much. The house where it all began was renovated and turned into a community center offering tutoring and activities for children and teenagers. Richard, embarrassed by the events, moved to another city. Before leaving, he apologized to his niece, acknowledging his mistakes. "Jessica, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I regret it. Uncle, everyone deserves a second chance. I hope you've learned from all this." Years later, when Brandon graduated from law school and Emily started medical school, Jessica reflected on how a metal box hidden under the floorboards of an old house had changed not only her life, but also the lives of many others. The true wealth she found wasn't in the jewels or documents, but in discovering her own strength and the ability to turn adversity into an opportunity to do good. Grandma Eleanor's letter remained framed on the wall of her new home, reminding her daily that the love and wisdom of one generation can transform all the following generations. And when people asked about the secret to her transformation, Jessica always answered, "It wasn't the money that changed our lives, it was the courage to fight for what's right." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're following us from. If you have something to share with us, leave your sincere words in the comments. Do you believe Jessica made the right decisions throughout her journey? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting stories.